Welcome to a particularly special edition of Live Lunch Break. My name is Rick Coster. We're streaming from theday.com. Lunch break typically does not mean eating at night. One of the reasons, though, that we have this special edition is because we have the opportunity to see the great solo acoustic guitarist Maneli Jamal, who is performing a special concert at Spindrift Guitars here in New London. This is his only date in an American tour, and we thought it was a great opportunity that we played with the routing. If he's going to be here, we made the effort to do it. So I think you're going to enjoy Maneli Jamal.
The first song I'd like to play for you guys is called Cold Arrival. And this is all in standard tuning. I'm assuming a lot of guitar players are here. So I'd like to kick things off with just standard tuning, just to see what can be done with this guitar, more specifically. And in this song, this is probably, I think, the first song that I had ever written in this percussive style of playing the guitar. So it's always interesting for me to kind of go back to that space of, playing guitar after like two or 3 years and being really excited about it, and just exploring the guitars, as many of us here have before. So this is Cold Arrival, and I thought about calling it Hot Arrival, but that sounded a bit too erotic. Thank you very much. I think I'm warmed up now. So it's really cool to be playing these songs on a guitar like this because you can hear everything. You can even hear my shirt. That's how loud it is. So that song was more specifically about me coming to Canada under pretty cold terms. That's why it's called Cold Arrival. Now, before Canada, as Jimmy was saying, I was living in Austin, Texas, of all places. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that place as a music capital of the world. I don't know if it still is, but a lot of good music is over there. And when I was there, I met a beautiful young girl. She was 10 years old. I was 10 years old too, which makes that perfectly okay. Just want to get that out of the way. And, we eventually started dating. We went through high school together. It was love at first sight, really. And then when I moved to Canada, we did the whole long-distance dating thing. We did Skype dating. I don't know if any of you have ever done that before. I would not recommend it. And of course, one thing led to another again, and I had the courage to propose to her. And then this happened, as you can see. See that? That's right, it didn't work out. It's okay. Oh, I got a sensitive crowd here. Okay. It was a beautiful thing, though, and I realized that every relationship is going to die. And I know what you're thinking, and it's true. I was a motivational speaker, and I got fired. I still can't figure out why. But in all actuality, I'm a romantic at heart, and I wrote many of my pieces dedicated to her. And I dedicated a song called Southern Magnolia for her, and that's what I used to call her, my Southern Magnolia. So if you're here on a date or just strangers sitting next to you, just hold their hand and tell them everything's going to be okay. Thank you. Hello. So those are both in standard tuning. I'm gonna slowly and surely throughout the set change the tuning of most of my pieces here. Maybe I can tell you guys a little story as I'm doing this. Now, many of you know that it's been 10 years since I've been able to come back to the States. And you know, when I was living down in Austin, Texas, I got a deportation letter. I don't know how many of you have gotten that here. It's not something to look forward to. But when we received this letter, we really didn't know what to do with it. You know, so we literally had 30 days to leave. And we had lived in America, acted like Americans. We talked like Americans. We paid taxes just like Americans. So we didn't know if this was a joke or not. And we eventually found out 29 days later that this was serious. So we had a couple of days to really pack our things and go. And we thought about going away. I mean, we had to. We couldn't stay in America anymore. So we thought about going down to Mexico and becoming drug cartels. The problem is, I'm Iranian, and we're better known for our heroin, not our marijuana. So you can see the conflict there. We would just go out of business. So just as the motivational speaker job didn't work out, the drug cartel thing didn't work out either. Thankfully, music is working out. I don't know why. But I wrote a song about it. And coming to Canada was definitely the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. I mean, it wasn't really a choice that I had to go through. It was my parents made me go. And I literally had a guitar in my left hand and a sketch pad in my right hand. And I just took that for the rest of my life until I started to build and afford nicer guitars. Of course. And the song that I wrote is called Us Against Them. And it's about us, which is my family, against them. The specific administration at the time that forced us out. Nothing against Americans. I love Americans. I have so many American friends. It's just a specific part of the government that unfortunately gave us the boots. No worries. No grudge. Very happy to be here. So this is called Us Against Them. Thank you very much. It's us against them. It's very interesting for me to be playing that specific song in such a dynamic range, and when it goes into the percussion part, that it's very important that the way I play it at home needs to translate the way I play it on stage. And I've been playing Cole Clark's for about 5 years now, and I was playing Taylor guitars before that. A Taylor 814, a very beautiful guitar, but when I plugged it in, it just didn't have the right presence that I was looking for. And fortunately, when I found out about Cole Clark, it just revealed a whole new side of a guitar that I had never seen before. And all these little nuances were coming out that I wasn't even aware of that existed. And when you amplify things, you can really hear things a lot more clear. So for me, it was quite really cool for me to really experience with this, because now I'm actually writing songs with this guitar plugged in. And I can think of this specific song here that I'm about to play. I actually wrote with the guitar plugged in, so I can really hear all the overtones and all the harmonics. And it's called Klingerstraße. What? German, yeah. I actually lived in Germany for 9 years, in Cologne, Germany. Yeah, it was really cool to have been brought up there. And Klingerstrasse means Bell Street in German. So the hardest thing for me was trying to get bell sounds out of the guitar. And I actually wasn't even aware that Klingerstrasse meant Bell Street until a German came up to me and told me that. You would think that I would know German, but I don't know what happened there. I'm actually going there in April as well for a big Europe tour, if any of you guys are going to be there. Thank you.
We are sitting in the not exactly green room of Spindrift Guitars in New London for this special edition of Live Lunch Break. And we have with us the extraordinary solo acoustic guitarist, Maneli Jamal. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
First time in the States in a long time, right?
Yeah, it's been a few years. Yeah.
You played a song to start the set from your first album, Desire Movement, and it's called Cold Arrival. Mm-hmm. And even though that album was several years ago, the music never stops evolving. And you've recently posted a video in which you sort of expanded on the piece. How does that work? Why would it occur to you to move in different directions on that song? And what did you specifically do with it?
Yeah, I mean, the song came from a specific part of my life, a specific experience about me coming to Canada under unwelcoming conditions, and it was very cold at the time. So I thought about calling it Cold Arrival, and that's kind of where the name came from. But as far as, I'm the kind of person who always goes back to the previous work and tries to just rediscover certain things that just at the time of writing weren't wasn't in my mind. And then after reflection and after, in retrospect, having played that song literally hundreds of times, I can get a bit bored with playing the same thing, right? So, and that's very natural for many artists. So it was important for me to kind of just go back and rediscover my love for that song. And sometimes that's by adding certain dynamics, or sometimes that's even by adding certain parts into the piece.
Makes sense, and it's cool that you have the affection for the song to do that rather than just create something new. But now you've released two albums that are both thematic in scope. One came from a very happy place, sort of a fountain of romantic love. The newest album, the L'Hommage Movement, is maybe more of a darker, reflective record. A, is it fair to describe those works that way? And B, if you're working from a specific mood that's happiness or maybe something sadder, do you find that the music actually takes on that tone, or is it just another way to get to a creative spot?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, although the message of some of those songs are a little bit darker, but the thing is, the songs might actually sound happier because of that. So it's kind of my way of kind of balancing out negativity and positivity in one song, and I do that quite often. Sometimes you'll hear some really sad songs be in some major keys. Again, but it comes down to what the listener is really feeling. If they can feel a bit of tension in the songs, then I feel like I've done my job in kind of evoking some sort of emotion that specific experience was based off of. So it's very interesting for me to always try and kind of create an illusion of some sort, and then maybe in the middle of the song something crazy will happen, something completely different that you weren't expecting. So it's always interesting for me to write and compose in that specific way.
Growing up in the rock era with Hendrix or Eddie Van Halen, there was an explosion in the stylistic parameters, whether it's Danny Gatton or Rory Gallagher or whatever, that kept taking electric guitar into new places. To me, and maybe I'm wrong, that's happening right now with solo acoustic guitar. You and a bunch of younger artists are basically going pyrotechnic on what the parameters of the form were. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. It's. I mean, every decade we're gonna have a new generation come out with just different ideas, different approaches, different ways of thinking about the instrument. And although the way that I play has been around for 20, 30 years, I guess it just hasn't become popular until within the past 10 years or so. So I mean, I'm sure we're gonna see even more creative people take the acoustic guitar to a whole different level than what some of us are doing today.
Do you ascribe a lot of this awareness, and we talked about this when we did a story on you in the newspaper, to social media and YouTube, that maybe 15 years ago you would have had no way to reach this burgeoning audience of people that are hungry for this?
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I'm so thankful for YouTube. I mean, if it wasn't for YouTube and social media in general, I don't think I would be where I am. Nowadays there's so much music around, so it's so easy to find music as well. So the question is, how do you stand out? What can you do, whether it's visual, or if it's just thought-provoking or whatever it may be. And luckily, I know it's a very visual style that I play, so that automatically is like, oh, okay, this is a bit different. But that can be overdone, so it's very important to kind of limit that and not overdo it technically too much, because you will lose the listener of what the initial song is about.
Well, your melodic sense is just captivating and beautiful, so you can throw all the tricks in there you want to, but and speaking of technique, as you said, in the last 20 years or so, it has evolved where y'all's right hand, a lot of on guitar percussion, hammer-ons, whatever you call those, hammer-ons, harmonics. But as much as you do with that, to me, what strikes me about your composition is that you've combined a lot of Western techniques with the Persian music you grew up with and maybe didn't pay any attention to when you were a kid. Is that true?
Absolutely. It was kind of a blessing in disguise because both of my parents play music, and growing up, I've always had that around me. So I'd always indirectly hear certain ornaments and nuances in Persian, traditional Persian music, that I wasn't even aware I was trying to pull off on the guitar, because that really hasn't been explored that much on the guitar specifically. So, I'm just trying to do my best just to kind of fuse all different elements, fuse what has been given to us, based on what music, where music has taken us so far, and just fuse all those elements together into one style, I guess.
I'm glad you expressed it that way, because when I listen to your music, one of the things that impresses me the most is in the space of a couple of bars, you'll jump through 4 or 5 different uh, traditions or styles, and it never seems showy offy. It never takes away from the overall evocative sense of the song. And I assume that's just intuitive, right? Or does it just flow that way?
Yeah, well, some of those songs that you describe, it sometimes can have like 10 different time signatures, different key modulations and stuff like that. Of course, at that time, I didn't really understand so much theory behind it, but then looking back on it, I'm realizing, wow, this is very interesting. Even for me, it's very interesting to kind of go back and observe it from like a third perspective. And it's always good to kind of throw those curveballs in, because as a listener, we can get too familiar and too attached to what is being given to us. So as you described, when we're throwing these kinds of curveballs at the listener, it can sometimes re-spark, I guess, this kind of entertainment value to that piece, especially when it's played live.
I think I listen to a lot of, I guess you would call it progressive rock and jazz music that my wife frequently refers to as headache music. At the same time, you have these technical elements, as you said, that you're throwing some curveballs and stuff. And when I asked her to listen to you, she thought, "Oh my God, that is so interesting that he would do that." But it was just the same thing. But it's beautiful. There was never. She didn't need any aspirin listening to you. There was no.
Thank you. That's very kind.
So I guess what I'm saying is that as complex as it is, it seems to transcend the barriers. You don't have to have a degree from Juilliard to appreciate it, right?
Well, that would be nice, but no, I mean, I don't have that. But growing up in a very musical family, almost is a degree by itself. Having that indirect flow of music and art throughout your whole life, that's priceless. There's no amount of money that can ever pay for such an education in music and culture, and I thank my parents for that 100%. That I was exposed to that at a young age, and then I took it, and then I ran with it.
Very special live lunch break. This is Maneli Jamal, and we are very privileged to have him here. Hopefully he'll be back in the States real soon. This is Rick Coster for theday.com.
So I'm a very visual person, and I consider myself an artist before I consider myself a musician, because I actually started with painting and drawing before I eventually was led to the guitar. And much the same way a film composer would write music to a visual scene is the same way that I approach music. So if there's a specific experience in my head, the best thing for me to do is close my eyes and just think of that experience and try to come up with some kind of soundtrack to that experience. It's a really interesting way of writing, because you're writing a bit more dynamically, maybe with more of a climax versus just like a verse chorus structure, which is not bad at all. It just depends on what you're going for. But for me, it's definitely more adventurous to kind of go in that world into more of a composed through style of writing. And more than anything, growing up, it's always been a pleasure to have traditional Persian music playing in the background. And indirectly, this affected me in my life more than I thought. Maybe with this piece I can demonstrate a little bit more about what I mean. So this is called Movement 2 and Movement 3. This is part of the Zaire Movement, which is a CD that I released in 2009. I've got the CDs over there. 2 CDs are back there for sale for $15. If you guys are interested, I'd be more than happy to sign those for you guys, or not. So this is Vasat and Zaire. Thank you very much. Let's move to 2 and 3. Thank you for standing still the whole time. So any questions while I tune about the guitar or about the songs or anything? All right, awesome. There's a very attentive crowd. The first piece was Cold Arrival. Cold Arrival.
Question over here.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
When you're tuning, I notice you don't stretch your strings. You don't see the.
Yeah, I should be practicing what I preach. No, I don't do that because I usually tune from low to high. So I think I don't really need to. I really haven't had an issue with tuning, unless you can hear it. Am I a bit out of tune?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I should start doing that. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Good advice. I do that when I restring a guitar, but not in the while I'm tuning to a different tuning. Yeah.
Who's the major influences of your music?
My life, I think. Like
Any other musicians?
oh, music. Yeah. One of my favorite musicians is Pat Metheny. He's a big influence. I'm not crazy about his jazz stuff, but his more compositional ideas are really interesting. He's done some soundtrack work as well, I think. That's definitely a big influence. I'd like to play a song dedicated to where I was born. So far, you guys know that I've lived in America for 9 years, Germany for 9 years, Canada for about 11 years now. And I was born in Belarus, in Minsk. That's right, my parents are communists. And you know, when we were there, yeah, I'm actually serious. But that's okay, I've got nothing against that. And when we were there, we went on a train ride to Germany. That was a one-way stop to Berlin. But at that time, it was still East and West Berlin. So when we got to the east side, my parents found a undercover abandoned subway to get to the west side, which is where I eventually started my life as a youngster. And when we went on that train ride, I tried to really put myself back there, even though I had no recollection of it whatsoever, because I was a baby. But every time I hear my parents talk about it, I always hear them talk about this tension that was always there. So I like to demonstrate train sounds coming out of the guitar. Now, when I told them about this, you know, I always asked them, why was I born in Belarus, of all places? How come we ended up there? And they sit me down with some hot Persian tea, as if that's going to comfort me, as if I'm about to get hit or something. And they told me that I was a mistake. A happy accident. But you know what? There are many happy accidents in this planet, such as the microwave, popcorn, penicillin, and for you more experimental ones, LSD. That's right. So if you hear train sounds coming out of the speakers, don't be afraid. Unless you're on LSD, then run for your life. think I'll do one more here before we talk a bit about the guitar more. Now this last song here is dedicated to where it all began and why I had such a nomadic life. And you know, both of my parents were studying in Sorbonne, in the University of Sorbonne in Paris, to get their PhD in art. Why anyone would get a PhD in art beats me. But while they were there, they dropped their studies to go back to Iran to try to be a part of the revolution that happened there. And both of my parents were so politically active against the Islamic regime that it unfortunately led them to be on the run. And my dad was so active that he had different aliases. In the north, he had a different name, but he had different occupations as well. He was a carpet weaver in the north, and in the south he was an illustrator, and in the west he was a shoemaker, until he tried to escape to Afghanistan. And they eventually caught him and his identities and threw him in jail for just believing that everyone should have equality and justice in their life. And when he was in jail, he was tortured, unfortunately, and he was given books on communism to try to persuade him to see how ridiculous communism is and to go to Islam. Being as stubborn as my dad is, my dad took these books and he believed it. So he eventually was turned communist in prison. It's very interesting to hear about that story. It sounds like something out of a movie, so it's really shocking to hear what he has been through. And this song is called Awakening, and it's a tribute to everyone around the world who has, made a conscious effort to try to change the world in a positive way. And in that way, when we all come together, such as we have today, hopefully we can spread the message of, if we do work together, that we are able to make a change in this world, positive change. It's the hippie way. All right? Yes. So thank you guys for being a great audience. I want to give a big thanks to Spindrift Guitars for Mike, John, and Mike, and Jim. There's a lot of mics here, I think, right? So let's give them a big hand, because without them, we wouldn't be here. And a big hand for Jamie Gale for inviting me here to Spindrift. He's part of the Cold Clock team. And I want to thank Rick Coster from The Day, right? He's been doing a lot of writing on me, and hopefully some of you have probably read it and came here because of that. So let's give him a big hand. Thank you. So this is called Awakening. very much.
We've just spent some quality time with Maneli Jamal on his only American date here at Spindrift Guitars in New London. A very special live lunch break, a terrific performer. Next week, we'll be back to sort of to normal routine. Happy Thanksgiving. We will have the Occam Woods Trio. This is Rick Coster for theday.com. Out.